Hey everyone. I wanted to talk about what seems to be America's most hated woman right now, and that is Gannon's stepmom, Letecia. As we all know, she's been at the center of all this controversy lately, and I kind of wanted to gather up what I think are the strongest suspicions that has everyone talking lately. So I'll just start with the basics for number one. She was the last known person to see Gannon, and that automatically is going to make people start talking. Without knowing, the details on this case that are being kept private, I think this is the strongest bit of evidence that makes her a person of interest in the case. It's a detail that can't be disputed, and it is the reason law enforcement had to take such a hard look at her to begin with. Number two is the infamous bandage. This one's kind of bothered me. Is it a bandage? Was she covering it up with a sweatshirt? Is this a defensive wound? Or is this just pixelation and everyone's kind of made a mountain out of a molehill? Could she have injured her hand and it has nothing to do with his disappearance? We don't know, and I think that kind of drives all of us a little nuts right now. Although I think people who insist this is so reminiscent to the Watts case are kind of looking at this thing with blinders on, and it's totally unhelpful. I will admit that I thought back to the tiny little scratch we saw on his neck during his own famous interview, and I hate that. Like I said, this one bothers me. Number three, again with the interview, her mentioning Gannon repeatedly in the past tense, saying he was such a sweet boy, he would always help out with the dog. It's definitely suspicious. Um, I've met people who do have similar speaking styles, and I think it's possible that this could be the case with Tisha. After seeing the speaking patterns that some of her family use on social media, I'm just saying, I think we can all guess that grammar wasn't taken all that seriously while she was growing up. I know that she is a teacher and supposedly does have her doctorate, but as they say sometimes, the schools there aren't well. Still, the use of past tense verbs when talking about Gannon, on top of all the other suspicions, it definitely doesn't help her. Number four, going to that security footage. Why did she come home alone? I think the worst thing about that detail is knowing that her husband saw the footage and immediately became suspicious of his wife. I've looked at the footage again and again, and I can see how some people say they see what looks like a shadow at the back tire when they returned home and that it could have been Gannon, but I'm also not entirely convinced. To me, it also looks like it could be pixelation and shade shifting due to the grainy footage because this is such a poor quality video. This one's really up in the air for me. I think it's entirely possible that she did in fact come home alone, and I think it's entirely possible that what we see is the two of them leaving and then returning home from maybe that doctor's appointment or maybe some type of, running some other errands. If you'd like to look at this entire raw footage without watermarks or anything like that, I'll put a link to it in the description. Number five is the deflecting, mentioning that she's taken care of Gannon for so long because his mother didn't want to. It was probably the worst thing in the world she could have said at that time. The fact she said that publicly is mind-blowing. If she is innocent, it can't be disputed that she most likely has some narcissistic traits. It's just so self-centered and such bad timing. It comes across as blame shifting. It just does. This is also why I have doubts on her saying that she was refused an attorney and treated unfairly upon initial questioning. Did she become so upset because she is innocent and she's put under the microscope and being questioned so aggressively, or is she, becoming upset or is she laying a possible defense for the future? I don't know. None of us know, but it's something I'll be paying attention to, as this case continues forward one way or the other. Number six is the fact that she was Landon's good, if not best friend, while Landon and Albert were still married. Many people will say that Letecia essentially stole her best friend's husband. Again, this speaks to poor character for sure on Ticia's behalf, but let's remember that it takes two socks to make a pair. As horrible of a friend as this makes her, stealing her best friend's husband wasn't something that she accomplished on her own. I don't think this speaks so much to her guilt in the case, but it does definitely shine a negative light on her character. Number seven, just the fact alone that Gannon was reported as a runaway, I just feel like there is something we're missing here. I know we have information saying that Gannon searched on his phone if his parents could track him if his phone was off. It seems that because she was the only adult in the home with Gannon when he went missing, that this was the initial story told to police and to his biological parents as well. Um, as I've mentioned before, it blows my mind that an 11-year-old boy could even be considered a runaway. In my opinion, the moment someone that age becomes accounted for, it should be looked at as missing and endangered, no questions asked. So while this does shed some suspicion on the stepmother and how she initially reported his disappearance and why, perhaps there is evidence, other evidence that we don't know of that's supporting this idea that he did, in fact, run away on his own accord. Lately, the press seems to sometimes lean the story that way, and of course, we aren't seeing the whole picture. I just think any of our guesses on this are as good as the next one. Number eight is the carpet everybody is talking about. Personally, I've not been able to actually verify that Ticia did in fact say that Gannon burned a carpet and she was replacing it. Could that screenshot have been faked? I don't know. But if the statement is true, for sure that's another red flag. I mean, it just doesn't sound good. It's like saying that you decided to bleach all of your sheets before your spouse mysteriously goes missing. I mean, even if it's true, it just has a certain ring to it, and it's gonna make people wonder and jump to conclusions. Anyhow, if anyone has any solid proof on this one, I'd love some details and sources or whatever. It's something I keep seeing being tossed around. Number nine is the coaching. I'll just say it. The interview is weird. She seems to coach her daughter, and the way the daughter seems to sort of ask her, "Well, what do you want me to say?" just sets off alarm bells ringing. Ticia seems really protective of her daughter, and while this could be because she's just a controlling mom and being a kind of mama bear, so to speak, she could also be seemingly protective of her daughter because the girl knows something. Nonetheless, if Ticia is innocent, she would have been better off to simply tell the daughter, just tell the reporter, what she knew about the day. If the daughter were there to answer more than one question, I could understand Ticia being fearful of a possible narrative or ulterior motive being attempted by the media talking to the daughter, but it was only one question, and that to me is just weird, you know what I mean? Okay, number 10. Aside from being the last known person to see Gannon, I think the detail in this situation that puts the biggest, the most amount of doubt in my mind is just how Albert seems to not be coming to her defense at all. In fact, we know that upon seeing the security footage that the neighbor had, he immediately broke down crying and said that Ticia was lying. I know she leaves the house voluntarily and mentions one of the reasons for that, for leaving, being that it was because of Landon, and she was coming to stay to help with the search. She also expressed that she can't be at the house because of harassment. Whether that harassment is from her husband and his ex-wife and surrounding family, or because that harassment is coming from the media, we don't know. That really wasn't made clear. But in any case, you would think that the husband would have a little faith in his wife and stand in solidarity. Um, Now, maybe their marriage was already on the rocks and just could not handle this pressure. Maybe their relationship was totally dysfunctional. Maybe he kind of had to put his priorities first and, had to stand with the mom, even if it meant his wife becoming furious out of jealousy, insecurity, a need to control, or for whatever reason. This one just bothers me. It bothers me almost as much as, the fact she was the last known person to see Gannon. Aside from these 10 things that I've mentioned here, there is, of course, many more details that I didn't touch on. A lot of the things are more or less juicy details on Tisha's personal life, like her online dating history, possibly being on sugar baby sites, her being fired from her teaching job and blaming it on Landon. And I think it's fine to speculate. I often think it can even be a good thing, but there's a lot of gossip out there, not to mention the outright untruths. People saying she never posted a single picture of Gannon. That's just a lie. Dragging her siblings into it, in my opinion, is just wrong. We've had false reports of an arrest and all kinds of other crazy things that I don't even want to mention or touch on because I don't think that it's helpful. It can be misleading, and I don't think that it's healthy. It's just my opinion. I also want to keep in mind as we follow the case to try and keep a little faith in law enforcement and our justice system. I think it's a good thing that we don't seem to be getting much news. If they are in fact building a case, they have a much better chance at it being a solid one if they keep it tightly wrapped. It just drives me kind of crazy when I see people at home saying, oh, they're doing such a bad job. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? The truth is we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. I know sometimes they do mangle cases and we have every right to question them, but some of the conclusions people jump to and assuming they can do a better job than professionals, it's just mind-boggling to me. I know I'm repeating myself and I can't change anybody's behavior. None of us can. The internet's going to do what it does. People are going to be how they are. I just wouldn't feel good about myself if I didn't mention it. I also want to encourage everyone to keep an open mind on Tisha's involvement and just consider the possibility that she could be innocent. If anybody'd like to play devil's advocate and tell me why they think she is innocent or otherwise why they feel she isn't, please feel free to express that here. I just kind of wanted to gather things up in one place and to take a look at things so far. I hope you guys enjoyed listening and thanks so much for watching.